My name is Margaret Carver, and the morning I saw balance zero point zero on our bank account, I realized I was married to a ghost. Not the kind that haunts you with whispers, but the kind that walks out the door while you're still dreaming and takes your whole life with him. That Monday started like any other coffee brewing the smell of toast my husband's suitcase by the door. He said he had a meeting in Chicago and would drive there himself. I kissed his cheek, told him to text when he got there. He smiled, said, "Don't worry, you'll be fine." Those were the last words I ever heard him say. When I checked the account that afternoon, it took a second for my eyes to adjust to the screen. Then it hit me. Balance 0.0. I blinked, refreshed the page, checked again. The number didn't change. It was like watching a trap door open beneath me, silent, sudden, final. I called the bank, my voice trembling. A polite woman explained that 2 large transfers had been made overnight to an out-of-state account. "Can you tell me who I asked?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carver. The transaction was authorized under your husband's name." Authorized. That word stung more than any insult could. It meant he planned it. Every dollar, every lie, every goodbye he never said. The coffee pot was still half full when I sat back down at the table. His jacket was gone. So were his watch, his shoes, and the framed photo from our anniversary trip. The house felt stripped, not just of things, but of sound, the way a church feels after the service ends. At first I refused to believe it. I told myself he'd been robbed, maybe forced to leave. But when I found his toothbrush missing too, I stopped lying to myself. People don't run from danger carrying dental hygiene. I called his phone again and again. It went straight to voicemail. By evening, I had left 11 messages. By the next morning, I deleted them all. When the police came, a young officer stood in my kitchen, writing in his notebook, like it was just another Tuesday. "So, your husband's been gone 24 hours, he said. "No sign of foul play." "Only financial," I replied. He didn't smile. "Any history of depression?" "Affairs, gambling." I shook my head. He jotted a few more notes and looked up. "Ma'am, sometimes people walk away from their lives." I stared at him. Then I guess he took mine with him. That night, I sat alone in the dark, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Outside, Indiana winter pressed against the windows. I'd always thought of snow as peaceful, but that night it looked like ash. On the 3rd day, my sister Linda arrived, bursting through the door with casseroles and opinions. "Margaret, this is insane. You can't stay here alone." "I'm not alone," I said. "I have bills, a mortgage, and a ghost who emptied my account." She sighed, placing her hand over mine. "You can come stay with me until we figure this out." "I can't," I whispered. "If I leave, he wins." Linda looked at me for a long time, the way only an older sister can, a mix of pity and exasperation. Then she said, quietly, "You've always been the stubborn one." After she left, I wandered through the house, touching what was left. The couch we bought on credit. The lamp with a crack in its base. Everything felt smaller without someone else's presence to measure against. That night, while searching for the spare checkbook, I found a folded note tucked in the silverware drawer. It was written in Tom's blocky handwriting. "You'll be fine. You always are." No apology, no reason, just that sentence like he was doing me a favor. I sank to the floor and laughed until I cried. Fine. What kind of man empties a life savings and calls it faith in your strength? The next morning, I sold my wedding ring. The pawnshop clerk counted out the bills without looking at me. It wasn't much, barely enough to cover one mortgage payment. Still, it was something. On my way out, I caught my reflection in the glass door. My face looked older than it had a week ago, like time had doubled overnight. Neighbors started checking in, each conversation more painful than the last. Any word from Tom? Maybe he'll come to his senses. You know men do crazy things. I nodded, smiled, and closed the door after them. Behind every kind word I heard the same question. What did you do to make him leave? But I knew this wasn't about me, not anymore. It was about control. He'd built a world where everything depended on him, and when he left, he wanted it all to collapse. One night, as the furnace clicked and the wind howled outside, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the same glowing words. Balance, 0 pay 0. It wasn't just money. It was proof that he'd taken everything: my safety, my trust, my sense of order. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. A flicker. A question. If he could disappear overnight, maybe I could learn to live without him. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, made coffee for one, and opened a new notebook. I didn't know what I would write, only that I needed to. At the top of the first page, I wrote, Day 1 life after 0.0. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The house sounded different without Tom. Every creak, every hum from the refrigerator echoed like a question. By the second week, I'd stopped expecting the sound of his car in the driveway. Even silence learns a pattern when it's all you hear. Bills came in faster than I could sort them. The mortgage, the utilities, even the credit card he'd opened in my name. I called the bank again, hoping someone had made a mistake. They hadn't. Mrs. Carver, the woman said gently, you're the only remaining account holder. That word remaining stung more than a loan. I started paying everything late, then later. Eventually, I stopped pretending I could keep up. I made soup from what I had left and ate in the kitchen with the lights dimmed so the rooms didn't look so empty. Linda called every night. You can't live like this, she said. Sell the house. Come stay with me until you figure out your next step. My next step is right here, I told her. Margaret. He's not coming back. Her words hung in the air like frost. I almost thanked her for saying them out loud. 2 days later, I opened the cabinet under the sink to grab the dish soap and saw a slip of paper taped inside the door. It was Tom's handwriting again, tidy, controlled, deliberate. Don't forget the water bill. He'd left reminders like that everywhere, sticky notes on the garage wall, the fridge, the bathroom mirror. Each one was a ghost. Each one said, I was here, and now you're cleaning up the mess. I wanted to hate him. Some days I did. But hate is heavy, and I was already carrying too much. I found work cleaning houses for people in town. Women I'd waved to for years but never really known. They paid in cash folded into little envelopes that smelled faintly of perfume. I cleaned kitchens like I was scrubbing my own guilt away. One afternoon, I came home and noticed the mail had piled up on the porch. A letter from the mortgage company, one from the power company, and one addressed to Tom Carver or current resident. I almost threw it out, but curiosity won. Inside was a past due notice for a business loan, $38,000 in default. He hadn't just taken our money. He'd been drowning in debt for years. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase him anymore. No more police calls, no more questions. If he wanted to vanish, I'd let him. But I wouldn't vanish with him. It started small. I made a list of things I could sell: Tom's tools, his old golf clubs, the snowblower he'd barely used. I sold the lot to a neighbor who paid cash and said good riddance to the man who left you. I smiled, but inside, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like sweeping up glass. By February, the Indiana winter had frozen everything in sight. I kept the thermostat low to save money, wearing 3 layers and drinking hot tea just to stay warm. At night, I'd fall asleep on the couch because the bed felt too big. One morning, while dusting the bookshelf, I knocked over a photo album. It fell open to a picture of us from our 10th anniversary, Tom had his arm around me, smiling in that easy way that once made me feel safe. I tore the photo in half before I realized what I was doing. Then I sat there staring at the pieces, wondering when love had turned into paperwork and signatures. The next day I found another note. Not from him this time, but from myself, a grocery list tucked inside a cookbook: eggs, milk, flour, sugar. The handwriting felt like a whisper from a different woman, someone who planned meals, who cared about birthdays and church bake sales. For the first time since Tom left, I baked. Not to sell, not for anyone else, just for the smell of it. The scent of cinnamon and butter filled the air, and for a moment, the house felt alive again. The phone rang. It was Linda. "What are you doing baking?" I said. "Baking? With what money? Flour doesn't ask for a receipt." She sighed long and loud. "Margaret, you need help?" "I'm helping myself," I replied. After I hung up, I cut a slice of pie and sat at the table where Tom used to read the paper. I ate it slowly, each bite tasting like defiance. That night, as I cleaned up, I found something wedged behind the silverware drawer, a folded piece of paper yellowed at the edges. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was another note, but different from the rest. "You'll be fine. You always are." Same words as before, same neat handwriting. But this time, there was something else written beneath it, a number, a bank routing code. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. He'd left me nothing, but now here was a clue, a new account. Maybe his, maybe someone else's. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the kitchen window, the moonlight spilling over the table, wondering what kind of man leaves his wife broke, yet still taunts her with breadcrumbs. By sunrise, the anger had cooled into something sharper clarity. I folded the note back up and placed it beside my coffee cup. Then I whispered, "If you thought I'd fall apart, Tom, you were wrong." And for the first time since he'd disappeared, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in months: control. I didn't touch the note again for 2 weeks. I left it on the counter beside the coffee maker, the ink slowly curling from the steam every morning. Sometimes I caught myself staring at it, wondering if it was a trap or a test. Maybe both. The truth was, I didn't care where Tom had gone anymore. But I cared about the number he'd left behind. The idea of him keeping secrets while I rationed soup made my blood warm in a way grief never could. One afternoon, after cleaning Mrs. Daly's house, I drove straight to the bank in town, the one Tom and I used before he moved our money to a better branch. The teller looked barely 30, polite but cautious. "I need to check if this routing number connects to an account," I said, sliding the paper across the counter. She frowned. "Ma'am, we can't give that information out." "I'm not asking for balance or details," I said. "I just need to know if it exists." She glanced at the number, then back at me. "Where did you get this?" "My husband left it for me before he disappeared." Something softened in her eyes. She typed a few things into her computer, then leaned forward. "It's real. But it's not here anymore. Closed about a month ago. Under his name," she hesitated. "Under both of yours." I walked out with a knot in my chest. He hadn't just stolen from me, he'd planned for me to never find out. The betrayal stung less like heartbreak now and more like insult. When I got home, I opened the old recipe notebook that had been buried in the drawer for years. I used to write down ideas for catering jobs in that book, little dreams of earning side money while Tom handled the real finances. Page after page of pies, casseroles, and notes from old clients, people I'd made happy in small ways back when I still felt useful. It's strange how something as simple as handwriting can pull you back to who you were. Mine was rounder than lighter. I must have believed life would stay that way. The next Sunday, I took that notebook to church. The ladies there were having a bake sale, and when they ran out of pies, I offered to bring one the following week. "You still bake Margaret?" one of them asked. "Not lately," I said. But I remember how. By the next weekend, I had 5 pies cooling on my counter. Apple cherry pecan and 2 buttermilk, the kind Tom used to love. I wrapped them carefully, packed them in boxes, and brought them to the church kitchen. When they sold out in 20 minutes, the pastor's wife asked if I could make more next time. Driving home, I cried, not from sadness, but from something quieter. Relief. Purpose. For months I'd been living like a ghost, and suddenly I had proof I was still here. Soon I started getting calls. A woman named Mrs. Daly wanted 2 pies for her bridge club. Then a man from the feed store ordered one for his wife's birthday. Word traveled the way it always does, in small towns fast sideways, and through people who pretend they're not gossiping. At first I worried people were just trying to help the poor abandoned wife. But after a few weeks, I realized they genuinely liked what I made. I hadn't tasted pride in a long time, but that was it, right there between the smell of butter and cinnamon. Money started to trickle in small bills folded into envelopes, tips tucked under pie boxes. For the first time since Tom left, I paid a bill on time. Just one, but it felt like victory. Linda called, of course. "You're selling pies now?" she asked. Half amused, half proud. "Trying to," I said. "Only you could turn a tragedy into a bakery." "I'm not baking out of joy," I told her. "I'm baking out of need." She paused. "Same thing if you do it right." It wasn't easy. Some nights my back ached from rolling dough, and the oven quit twice during a snowstorm. But every morning, when I woke up to the smell of sugar and coffee, I felt a little less like the woman Tom left behind. One evening, I saw Mrs. Daly again when I dropped off her order. She must have noticed the exhaustion in my face because she said softly, "You know, Margaret, sometimes God closes a door so he can open the kitchen." I laughed. "That's one I haven't heard before." "Then it's yours to keep," she said, smiling. That night, as I cleaned the counters, I thought about Tom again. Somewhere out there, he was living off someone else's generosity or running from his own debts. Either way, I hoped he'd never taste another one of my pies. Before bed, I sat down at the kitchen table with my notebook. On the first blank page, I wrote a new title, Carver's Kitchen, Homemade Pies. The handwriting was still shaky but stronger than before. A week later, Mrs. Daly called again. "The ladies from church want to know if you'll take orders for Easter." "I might," I said. "Depends how many ovens I can borrow. You'll need more than ovens, dear. You'll need help." I looked around the room, quiet, clean mine. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," I whispered. That was the night I decided to stop waiting for the phone call that would never come. Instead, I started making lists, ingredients, prices, orders, and one small promise to myself. If he took everything, I'll build something new with what's left. And somehow, that felt like the first honest prayer I'd said in months. The first morning of spring market season in Indiana smells like thawed earth and coffee. I loaded my old Buick with folding tables, tablecloths, and 12 fresh pies wrapped in foil. The boxes filled the car with the warm scent of butter and spice, masking the faint odor of worry that always came with leaving the house alone. The local farmers market was held downtown every Saturday from April through October. I hadn't been in years, not since Tom used to drag me there for kettle corn and small talk with people he pretended to like. Now I was showing up as one of the vendors. It felt strange exposing myself like that, as if everyone would see through the smile and read the word abandoned written across my face. Setting up was awkward. My hands trembled as I unfolded the table. The woman in the next booth, a retired teacher named Marlene, smiled at me. First time selling, I nodded. "Don't worry," she said, "nobody bites except the kids when you run out of samples." That made me laugh for the first time in days. By 8:30, the market was humming. People strolled by with coffee cups and strollers, dogs on leashes, the smell of fried dough mixing with lilacs. A man stopped in front of my table. "What's good today?" "Everything's good if you like real butter," I said. He grinned and bought an apple pie. When I handed it to him, he said, "Carver, huh? I'll remember that name." It was a simple exchange, but my chest swelled as he walked away. Someone had said my name, not his. My name. By noon, every pie was gone. I'd sold out. The cash in my apron wasn't much, maybe $150, but it was mine. Not ours. Not his. Mine. I packed up slowly, letting the others go first, so I could savor the sight of my empty table. As I was loading my car, a reporter from the local paper approached me. "I'm writing a piece on small-town women entrepreneurs," she said. "Mind if I take your picture?" I hesitated. "I'm not really an entrepreneur." "You made something people wanted," she said. "That's what business is." I nodded, and she snapped the photo. A week later, the paper came out. The headline read, "She baked her life back." I cut it out and taped it to the refrigerator. The orders started coming in after that. Not big ones, birthday parties, church events, a few regular customers who'd leave notes like "best pie I ever had," or "you remind me of my mother." Those words were sweeter than any payment. Still, the work was exhausting. I'd bake late into the night, the oven warming the kitchen like a small hearth. Sometimes I'd talk to Tom out loud while rolling dough just to fill the silence. "You said I'd be fine," I'd tell the air. "You should see me now." One Saturday in June, a man stopped by my booth again. I recognized him from a few weeks earlier, broad-shouldered silver hair, the kind of gentle smile people earn after losing something of their own. "You're the pie lady," he said. "Depends on the day," I joked. He picked up a cherry pie. "You ever need a hand carrying these boxes?" "I've got a truck." I studied his face, the sincerity in it. "And what's your name?" "Harold," he said. Just Harold. He became a regular, sometimes buying pies, sometimes just stopping by to talk. He'd lost his wife 2 years earlier, and though we never said it outright, we both understood what loneliness sounded like. By midsummer, he was helping me carry supplies to the market. We'd talk about weather, local gossip, the rising price of butter. Once, when a gust of wind nearly blew my sign away, he caught it just in time. "Guess you could say I'm your business partner now," he said with a grin. "Temporary hire," I teased. It was harmless companionship, no expectations, no pretense. Just two people learning how to exist again. But not everyone saw it that way. Small towns love a story, and soon whispers reached me through the church crowd. Margaret Carver's found herself a new man. I didn't bother correcting them. Let them talk. It was better than being the woman whose husband disappeared with the money. One evening, Harold dropped me off after the market. As I unloaded the last pie box, he hesitated. "You ever think about what you'd do if he came back?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't think about him." I lied. He nodded slowly. "Just remember, you don't owe him anything." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his words. "You don't owe him anything." The thing is, part of me still did not money, not love, but closure. The story wasn't finished yet, and deep down, I knew it. The next morning, I checked the mail. A letter from the bank waited inside. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another bill. But the envelope looked different, handwritten my name in neat block letters. Inside was a short note. "Mrs. Carver, a man named Thomas Carver visited our branch last week asking about your business account. We advised him we could not disclose details. Thought you should know." The page trembled in my hands. My first thought wasn't fear, it was anger. After all these months, after all that rebuilding, he was sniffing around again. I sat down hard at the kitchen table, heart hammering. For months I'd trained myself to live without him. Now the thought of seeing his face again made my skin prickle. He'd left me with nothing but a note that said, "You'll be fine." And now that I was, he wanted a piece of it. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it under the fridge magnet beside the newspaper clipping. Next to "She baked her life back," I wrote a single new word in pen, almost. It was early December when I saw him again. Snow flurries drifted through the gray Indiana air, dusting the roofs and sidewalks like powdered sugar. I was closing up the bakery for the evening. Yes, I could finally call it that now. The little corner shop I'd leased 3 months earlier still smelled of fresh paint and cinnamon. The bell above the door jingled and I turned, expecting Harold or one of my regulars. Instead, I saw him. Tom stood in the doorway, thinner than I remembered, his hair grayer. His once proud posture slumped like an apology. His coat looked expensive, but his eyes didn't. "Hi, Maggie," he said softly, like he was testing whether my name still fit in his mouth. For a second, the air thickened. My hands froze mid-wipe over the counter. I felt the same jolt I had the morning he vanished, only colder. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice was steady. My heart wasn't. He smiled faintly. "You look good. The shop's nice. Answer the question." I didn't know where else to go. There it was. The line. The one every woman who's ever been left dreads and expects in equal measure. He stepped closer, his shoes squeaking against the tile. "Can we talk?" "No. Please, just for a minute." I should have thrown him out. I should have told him to find a new life to ruin. But curiosity, or maybe closure, is a tricky thing. I motioned toward one of the tables. 5 minutes. He sat down, slowly rubbing his hands together like he was cold. I stayed, standing, arms crossed. "I messed up," he began. "You think I said." He exhaled. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Good," I said. "Because intent doesn't change a thing." He looked around the shop. "You did all this, yes. Without your help? Without your money? Without your permission?" He nodded, eyes glistening. "I deserve that." "No," I said. "You deserve the silence I gave you." But apparently, even that wasn't enough. He flinched. "I'm not here to fight." "Then why are you here, Tom?" He hesitated, then finally said it. "Can I come home?" The words landed like a dropped dish, sharp, final, irreparable. I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "Home. You mean the house you left me to lose, the one I had to fight to keep?" He stared down at his hands. I was scared. Of what failing? You already did. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the sound of the clock ticking above the counter. He looked up, and for the first time, I saw not the man I married, but the man who ran. "I was ashamed," he said. "The business was collapsing. I didn't want you to know. I thought if I disappeared, it'd be easier for you." "Easier," I snapped. "You emptied our account and left a note that said, 'You'll be fine.' Do you know what I had to do to survive?" His voice cracked. "Yes. I saw the article. She baked her life back. That's why I came. I'm proud of you." "Proud," I said, stepping closer. "You don't get to be proud. You forfeited that right the day you stole my life savings." He looked small, then smaller than the man who used to fill a room with his voice and charm. "I didn't know where else to go," he repeated quietly. "I don't have anyone, Margaret." And that somehow was the first honest thing he'd said. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. I poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from him. "You left me with nothing, Tom. not even dignity. And now you're sitting here asking for mercy. I'm asking for forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't free." He took a sip of the coffee, wincing at the bitterness. "You've changed," he said. "I had to." He looked around again, eyes landing on the framed photo of my staff. 3 women who helped me run the bakery, all widows or divorcees. "They work for you." "Yes." He smiled faintly. "You built a little army." "No," I said, standing. "I built a life." He swallowed, nodded, and stood too. "I just thought maybe..." "Maybe what?" "Maybe we could start over." I shook my head. "You already started over, Tom. Without me." The bell above the door jingled again. Harold walked in, holding a box of supplies, his smile fading when he saw Tom. "Everything okay here?" Tom glanced between us, his face tightening. "Who's this A friend?" I said. "Someone who stayed when you didn't." Harold set the box down gently. "You should leave, sir." Tom's voice turned sharp. "This is between me and my wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "You can't sue for half of something you abandoned." He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. His shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I looked him dead in the eye. "So am I. But sorry doesn't change the balance." He nodded, once eyes wet. "I'll go." The door closed behind him, and the sound of it echoed through the bakery like a final exhale. Harold walked over, resting a careful hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded. "I think so." "What did he want to come home?" "And what did you tell him?" "That home isn't just a place," I said, quietly. "It's what you build when no one's coming back." Harold smiled gently. "Then I'd say you already found it." That night I locked up, turned off the lights, and stood by the window watching the snow fall. For the first time, it didn't look like ash. It looked clean. I whispered to the empty street, "You'll be fine, Tom. You always were." Then I flipped the sign to closed and went home. The letter arrived 2 weeks later, plain envelope, courthouse seal, my name typed neatly on the front. I knew what it was before I opened it. Tom was suing for half the bakery. I sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where I'd once stared at a 0.20 balance, and laughed. It wasn't the shocked, broken kind of laugh from back then. It was quieter, sharper. The kind that comes from realizing you've finally run out of fear. Linda came over that evening. "You're kidding," she said, waving the paper like it might burst into flames. "I wish I were." He disappeared for over a year, and now he wants half. Apparently success has a scent. She slammed the paper down. "You're not giving him a dime." "I don't plan to." The next morning, I called a lawyer. His name was Mr. Jensen, tall, calm, and blunt in a way I appreciated. He read through the documents, nodding slowly. "Mr. Carver's claiming marital property rights," he said. "He's arguing that your business was built on joint assets." "Joint assets that he stole," I said. "Yes. Unfortunately, the law doesn't care about irony." "So what do we do?" "We prove that every dollar spent after his disappearance came from your own earnings." "Do you have records?" "I keep everything I said. Receipts, invoices, statements. I learned that lesson the hard way." He smiled faintly. "Then we'll win." The first court date was set for early February. Harold insisted on driving me. "You don't have to," I told him. "I know," he said. "That's why I want to." The courthouse was small, one of those brick buildings that smelled faintly of paper and old wood polish. I sat in the front row, my hands clasped around a folder, thick with proof, every bill I'd paid, every receipt for flour and sugar, every tax return since the day Tom vanished. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He looked like a man trying to wear the past like it still fit. He didn't look at me. The judge entered a gray-haired woman with kind but firm eyes. "We're here to discuss the matter of Carver versus Carver," she said. "Property and financial claims following separation." Tom's lawyer went first. His voice was smooth, polished. "Your Honor, my client contributed to the foundation of this marriage and the assets accumulated therein. Regardless of the unfortunate circumstances, he maintains rightful ownership of 50%. When it was our turn, Mr. Jensen stood. "Your Honor, the foundation my client's husband refers to was erased the morning he emptied their joint account and disappeared. Mrs. Carver built her business and her life from zero. Every bill, every investment, every success was achieved without him." The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Carver, do you have documentation?" I handed her the folder. My fingers didn't shake this time. For an hour, we went through every detail income expenses the day I sold my wedding ring for mortgage money. Each line was a reminder of how far I'd come. When the judge finally looked up, she said, "Mr. Carver, is it true you left your wife without notice or financial support?" Tom cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor. And you now wish to claim ownership of a business established after your departure." He hesitated. "I helped her once. I supported her." "In what way?" he faltered. "I believed in her." A few people in the gallery laughed softly. Even the judge's lips twitched. "Mr. Carver?" She said, her tone soft, but final belief is not a financial asset. Case dismissed. Tom stood there, stunned. I almost pitied him, almost. Outside the courtroom, snow was falling again, soft and slow. Harold squeezed my hand. "It's over," he said. "Not yet," I whispered. "There's one more thing I have to do." I found Tom sitting alone on the courthouse steps, his head in his hands. For a long moment, I just stood there watching the man who once made me believe I couldn't live without him. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. "You won," he said quietly. "No," I said. "I just stopped losing." He nodded, defeated. "I don't have anywhere to go." I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope, a check for a few $1,000s. He frowned. "What's this?" "It's not forgiveness," I said. "It's closure. You can't build a life when someone owes you something. So now you owe me nothing." He stared at the check, his voice breaking. "Why would you do this after everything I did because I'm not you?" He didn't argue. He just nodded, clutching the envelope like it was the last thing keeping him from disappearing again. As I turned to leave, he said softly, "You really did fine, didn't you?" I smiled, faintly. "You were right, Tom. I always was." Harold was waiting by the car. "You gave him money?" he asked as we drove off. "Peace isn't free," I said. "But it's cheaper than resentment." That night, I went home and pulled out the old notebook, the same one that had started everything. I flipped to the first page where I'd written, "Day 1 life after 0 0. Underneath it, I added, "Day 512, balance restored." Then I closed the book, turned off the light, and let the quiet feel like victory instead of emptiness. A year later, the bakery no longer smelled like survival. It smelled like life. The sign above the door now read, "Carver's Corner Bakery," gold letters on pale cream wood. The windows glowed each morning before sunrise, and when I switched the lights on, the soft hum of ovens replaced the echo of loneliness that used to live in that space. By then, I had 3 employees: June, a retired nurse; Tanya, a single mother of 2; and Alma, who'd lost her husband the same year I lost mine, just in a different way. Together, we ran the bakery like clockwork, every movement practiced, every silence comfortable. Sometimes when customers asked how I started, I'd smile and say, by running out of everything but faith. They usually laughed, not realizing how literal that was. Harold still came by every morning for coffee and cherry pie. He'd help fix a loose hinge or carry in flour sacks without being asked. Once I caught him replacing the squeaky front doorbell with a new one. A gift, he said, from a satisfied customer. In another life, maybe I would have loved him. Maybe I still could. But love wasn't a priority anymore. Peace was. And peace doesn't demand flowers or promises. It just asks for stillness. One quiet afternoon in late spring, I sat by the front window, balancing the register. The numbers added up neatly for once they were on my side. The radio played an old Patsy Cline song, and through the glass, I could see Mrs. Daly waving as she crossed the street with her granddaughter. "Life's come full circle, hasn't it?" she said when she came in. "More like a spiral," I told her. "You come back around, but you're never quite the same." She smiled. "You look happy, Margaret." I am, I said, and meant it. Later that day, a letter arrived in the mail. No courthouse stamp this time. Just a plain white envelope with unfamiliar handwriting. I opened it cautiously. "Dear Margaret, I've been staying at a shelter in Ohio. I wanted to thank you for the check. I used it to get sober to get help. I don't deserve your kindness, but I wanted you to know it mattered. You were right. I was wrong. I hope you're well. Tom." I sat there for a long time, reading it twice, then a third time. No anger came, no sadness. Either just a calm, distant gratitude that he'd finally taken responsibility even if it was too late. I folded the letter and tucked it into the old notebook between the first and last page. It didn't belong in the middle anymore. The next Sunday, Harold asked if I'd join him at church. I hadn't gone in months. I wasn't angry at God, I'd just been too busy proving something to myself. But that morning, I put on my navy dress and went. The pastor's sermon was about restoration, how even the most broken things can be mended if you stop trying to make them what they were. I stared at the stained glass, the sunlight pooling through like liquid honey, and thought about how long it had taken me to understand that. After service, Harold walked me to the car. "You were quiet today," he said. "I was listening," I told him. "To what?" "To the sound of nothing missing." He chuckled softly. "That's a rare kind of quiet." "It is." That summer, the bakery hosted a town fair pie contest. It was my idea, a way to give back to the place that had quietly carried me when I didn't have strength of my own. Women lined up with pies of every shape and flavor. June entered her lemon meringue. Tanya brought her blackberry crumble, and Alma, always the wild one, made a bourbon pecan that won first prize. As the crowd clapped and laughed, I stood back, letting them take the spotlight. It wasn't false modesty I'd had my turn. This was theirs. A local reporter asked for a group photo. "Mrs. Carver, smile," she said. "I did a real smile this time, not the kind you use to hide sadness." That evening, when the fair ended and the booths came down, Harold walked me home. We didn't speak much. The air smelled of sawdust and sugar. At my porch, he paused. "Margaret," he said quietly, "I've been meaning to ask you something." I waited. He took a deep breath. "Would you ever consider, well, dinner that's not about pie?" I smiled. "Dinner, maybe. Marriage, no." He laughed, the sound low and kind. "Fair enough." I watched him walk away, the streetlight catching the silver in his hair. Then I turned back toward the house, my house, and for the first time, it didn't feel empty. Later in bed, I couldn't sleep. I reached for my notebook again, turning to the very last page. I wrote slowly, carefully. Balance $12,842.67. But that's not the real balance. The real one is between who I was and who I became. I paused, then added one last line. I once thought marriage was the safest place to keep your heart. Now I know the safest place is in your own hands. As I closed the book, I imagined someone out there, another woman, staring at an empty account, an empty bed, an empty room, needing to hear that it wouldn't always feel like this. So if she ever finds my story, I hope she understands. You can lose everything and still come out whole. Sometimes that's what it takes to start over. If you've ever lost everything and built yourself back up, share your story. Someone out there needs your voice.